has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome, Justicios, to yet another edition of Political Unmuted, the show that they just cannot keep quiet. We're going to come out with our opinions, whether you like it or not. I was singing that old-time hymn to myself today, count your blessings, count them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. You've got to be careful of Victorian religion because it's all about knowing your place and sort of being happy with what you've got. But there's not a bad thing about counting your blessings, particularly in this world that's all doom and gloom, and particularly if you're a socialist and you give a damn about other people, it rapidly becomes overwhelmingly sad. And it's not bad to count your blessings every now and again. And I was counting my blessings and doing this show with these wonderful people week after week is one of my greatest blessings. And what a lucky person I am to be able to turn up and ask these people what they think. And I hope you feel as lucky that you can listen to what they think and be blessed by what they have to say. I'm going to say hello to them first, and then we'll move to Moment of the Week. But let's just say hello. Hello, Kerry.
Hiya, John. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, no. It's our privilege. God bless you. Now, stay out of trouble this week, okay?
I'm never in trouble, me, John.
No. Jane, hello. Good to have you back, Jane.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you.
What would we do without our brain box? Sort of expecting great things from you, not to put any pressure on you. And then the boss, Paul. Hiya, boss.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely fine, and hopefully you are too. Thank you for running this show as always. Let's start with Moment of the Week. Ready to go?
Yeah, the moment of the week. I don't know why I didn't do it. I'll have to work that out. So technical issues, but techno notice in the words of Alan Partridge.
With the technology this week. Kerry, moment of your week.
Well, my moment isn't a very negative moment, if I'm honest, and I'll be brutally honest with you. I think that me as a UC claimant and as a carer, this is probably the worst month that I have really genuinely felt the cost of living crisis. Obviously, the winter fuel payments have now stopped. It's now half term. Previously, we've got vouchers or money off the council, for the free school meals during the holidays. We've had nothing of that, and everything's just stopped. Like, all this support for supposedly vulnerable people in society is completely and utterly stopped, and it's the worst month for me ever. I am brutally feeling it this month, and it's actually made me feel really mad and very sad that I'm trying to do my best and I can't do it anymore, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to go and get a job that's not going to fit in with my conditions and my life and stuff like that, because it's just getting that bad. It's just awful. It's really, really bad.
I mean, lots of people in the same situation. And I've noticed this month that, they say that inflation is beginning to slow down, but the price rises in the shops of basic foods are just exploded this last fortnight.
They have. And it's just horrific. I just think that I mean, I know it's spring and that now, but it's still quite cold, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like, it's all right during the day, get a bit of sun, but on a night, it's like really still nippy. And everything's just like stopped, and it's just mad. Like, it's great. And I know there's people a lot worse off than me, but this is like the first month that I'm literally actually say I would swear, John, saying what the actual F, like, wow. And it's really
If
scary,
so.
Shams. It's scary.
There'll be if people want to sort of comment on the cost of living crisis, Justice CEOs, we love your comments. I'm so sorry, Kerry. Jane, moment of your week.
So the moment of my week. So and this isn't the sort of moment of the week that I normally have, but it's the passing away of Paul O'Grady. So, and the reason why I say this, because I know we discuss political issues on this show, but looking back and reflecting, I think that Paul O'Grady was a personality, one of like not a huge part of my life, but someone who gave me the impression when I was younger and growing up that the world was a better and kinder place than it actually has turned out to be. And I'm quite grateful for that. I'm quite grateful that I was given that impression, and that for that we've got decent people like that who can be role models in society. So
Very, very hostile to the Tories and love dogs. So must have been
Lib
a good
dogs.
person. And we were talking about loving dogs before the show went on. Sort of dogs are wonderful. We've agreed. And thank you, Jane. Right. Well, sort of. It is. Thank goodness I've been counting my blessings, because it's all doom and gloom at the moment. Paul, moment of your week.
Moment of my week has been the Labour Party videos that they've released this week. I basically wanted to tear out my own eyes because, and I don't know if I have a cringe gland, but if I have a cringe gland, it has been overused now. You know, like my teeth were itchy. It was just
I'm like, this is my truth now, Paul.
honestly, like, it was like, oh, come on, Ange, let's go and do some things in Swindon. And it was just it's just absolutely appalling.
He was in Hartlepool, wasn't he?
He was in Hartlepool as well. But if on the theme of videos, Matt Kennard's Double Down News video on Starmer this week is absolutely spot on. If anyone can watch it, continue to support him and continue to support the Labour Party, then you know what you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, you know, you're admitting that you support a liar and support, like, you know, and I think we need to own these things. If people are saying, yeah, you know, you got to get the Tories out, it's really, really important. How is it? Should the option be between two awful people, two liars? You know, is he even the lesser of two evils? That's up for debate. But what isn't up for debate is the fact that he consistently lies. Corbyn's his friend. Yeah. Corbyn's not his friend, and he never was his friend. Well, he's lied at least once there, hasn't he? Because he said both those things. But his lies are much more sinister than that. The things he did as head of the Crown Prosecution Service, the fact that, like, you know, he didn't want to prosecute the people who murdered John Charles Domenices, or I'm really sorry, I forgot the guy who the police struck him from behind and killed him for no reason and things like that. You know, but he did want to prosecute people for stealing bottles of water in the London riots. You know, the guy is I think he's dangerous. I don't want him to be Prime Minister in the slightest. And that's not out of pettiness. That's just, he is as bad, if not worse, than a Tory. He's a dangerous guy.
Going back,
you know where you are with the Tories.
Going back to the Labour Party propaganda, there's a thing come out that we were talking about, you and I, on Facebook. A Labour housing proposal for a motion to conference, and the motion says that they ask the leadership to publicise the wonderful plans that Labour has got for housing. No proposals about the housing. We just want you to, and that sums up the Labour Party at the moment. They just want a set of people who sort of say, "Oh, you're wonderful. We need more of you, please." Hopeless. Okay, let's. Am I going to get some music now, Paul? Oh, cool.
Now it's time for the big story.
And the big story is that it's Mark's birthday. No, sorry, that's the second big story. The big story this week is on the rental housing sector, which has really hit the headlines. And the dog agrees as well. Kerry, tell us what's going on with the rental sector? What's going wrong?
It's just in complete and utter chaos, isn't it? There needs to be more like governance over it for a start. I mean, I'm in a well, people call it a council house, but it's a social housing house. And my landlord, and you think that social housing is going to be the best landlord, are an absolute joke. They're called Beyond Housing. People call them Beyond a Joke. And they just I don't know whether it's because the Tories are in power and they're just letting them free reign. And we know about the Tories have a lot of Tories, a lot of MPs like rent places out and stuff like that. I know, is it Paul Howell in your neck of the woods, Paul, who rents houses out? I just think that it's all for free reign now, and I think that they're allowed to charge as much as they want to charge and do what they want to do, and there's no like guidance with it. I mean, I've had black mold in my house for about 5 years now, and it's took a child to die, a 2-year-old little boy to die, for them even to approach the issue. A child had to die for them. From my personal experience, they've told me it's condensation, but a child has had to die for millions of people to get heard, which is, to me, morally and absolutely wrong. And I think that when you get the Tories saying, "Oh, we're building all these new homes, the shoe boxes that are unaffordable to the likes of me, you have to get a mortgage for about 250 grand. I've got no chance of doing that. They're not building homes that are needed for the people who need them, like me and other people in society. But I think that the renting market currently in this country is absolutely craziness. I mean, I want to move from my house and I've got no chance, but it's just madness, complete and utter madness. But I think that the reason that they're allowed to get away with this madness is because the Tories that are in current power rent out things and they're just letting everything slide. And housing conditions are at the worst at the moment. You only have to look at him on ITV News. What's he called? The reporter, the skinny lad with a skinny tie. And he goes round and he's a really, really good journalist, and he goes round and sees things and he opens people's eyes. It's just everything's just like free reign. They can do what they want. It's some of the houses that I've seen that people live in, like going back to like the Victorian ages, like some people have got no hot water or boilers working, and these private landlords just get away with it. There's nothing like in it, and it's just like mad. It's just a bit of a mad time. But if I hear one more Tory saying we're building so many homes and we're doing this and we're doing that and we're doing that, they're not building the right types of homes for the likes of me and many other people in society. They're building these semi-detached £250,000 homes that are out of budget for the majority of people where I live. It's just like mad, and they're just getting away with everything. There needs to be much more stricter legislation and rules and guidance about private renters, and now even social housing, like renting people like my landlord. There needs to be much more stricter rules around it, because they're just getting away with everything, anything that they want to do, and it's wrong.
When I was a councillor, I was called out, just for everybody in general. When I was a councillor, I was called out by a resident, and she'd complaining about mould on her wall. And I went round and I was hanging around. And he came in and they do this, they tell you it's condensation. Are you drying your washing inside the house? What you need to do is open the windows, get some fresh air. In the middle of winter.
Yeah. When it's snowing, I will do, yeah.
Bonkeroonies. And I just said to him, we both know that's shit. That's rubbish, isn't it? Now, what can you do about this? Because we both know that part of the problem is that she hasn't got double glazing. And absolutely, they lay the blame for the problems on the tenants. It's outrageous. Jane, I mean, the problems in the private rented centre, in the rented sector, full stop, are well publicised. Kerry thinks it's to do with tougher legislation. I mean, what the Tories and the Tory government and the Labour Party promising to do about it? How good are their proposals? How effective would they be?
So the government's hopefully soon going to bring through their renters' bill of rights. They've been saying they'll scrap Section 21 no filter evictions for, I think, 4 years now. They can move very fast when they want to introduce legislation around deporting refugees to Rwanda. But they've been talking about this for 4 years, and I believe it's the biggest cause of homelessness in this country, and they've done absolutely nothing about it. There are some positives in the Renters' Bill of Rights, but it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. And we were talking before that Labour do have some positive things that they're saying that would improve conditions. I think having pets is a really important thing. People in certain private rented accommodation generally can't have pets, and I don't think that's right. The conditions with damp and expensive storage heaters, old boilers that don't work, hot water that doesn't work. I think it was a revelation to me to see that there's the same issues in social housing, and it was one of the Paul Band exposés on ITV last year that I was really shocked. I always assumed that people in social housing had it much better, and it's really shocking. The situation is disgusting. But I think neither of these tackles the very real issue of cost, because the private rental market is absolutely unaffordable. It's gone absolutely mad. Jeremy Corbyn was saying on a show recently that in his borough, I think a bed sits £2,000 a month in London. In his area in London, I used to live in Oxfordshire, and it wasn't far off of that. It's not right. People can't afford to pay these rents. So what you get is there are so many people attracted for a fast buck. There are so many bad people who just want to make quick money out of it, who don't care. And you have people just scrabbling around, taking the cheapest, I say cheapest with irony, thing they can find, which is a damp hovel that's not fit for them to live in, but costs them probably 3 times as much as they can afford. And they sink into a pit of debt just trying to live, and living in miserable conditions, and it's really wrong. And neither of the parties, neither of the Labour or Tory party, are doing anything or suggesting anything whatsoever to suggest a solution to that. And you can't ignore that, because the living conditions are really important. But if people can't afford to live, then that's really significant. So I just don't feel that they're offering a sufficient solution to this issue. They're just ignoring the elephant in the room. I know Labour had talked about the land value tax, because we've got a strange system in this country they don't have elsewhere, which elevates the cost of land for the profit you can make if you build on it, which is, I believe, part of the issue behind our ridiculous accommodation prices. But from what I've seen of the Labour Party so far, if that is still in their manifesto, then I would be very surprised if they actually did try to tackle that if they got into power.
Neil Terry says, why do people have holiday homes? I mean, is that the answer, stopping her at holiday homes?
No.
There's a lot, isn't there, Kerry? But I'm not a big fan of holiday homes, because I live on the coast, and people do buy holiday homes here, and I'm happy for them. But it does make me sad that it does drive up the prices, because you'll get people from London who have got equity in London, a house in London, so they can borrow a lot of money, and it pushes the prices up. And also you've got empty homes sitting there when you've got people who can't afford to rent or live in their area. And I think is it Cornwall where the council housing list is is exactly the same size as the number of Airbnbs up for rent.
I mean, there's two problems, isn't there? One is the people who have holiday homes and they go there for their holidays and then they go back to but the other one is the real problem is Airbnbs, isn't it? Because a landlord can make so much more from Airbnbs that what they're doing is landlords are moving out of the long-term rented sector into the short-term Airbnb. It's a big problem in Scarborough and Whitby, where I am, and they've got various ways, but the ways they always seem to try and get it on a personal note is that they say we're going to triple the council tax for people who have second homes, and the Airbnbs sort of get mixed, and there's this big problem about the fact that if you have an Airbnb, then it's a completely different tax system to if it's a genuine second home to go to. Paul, what is the answer? What is the answer for you?
We need systemic change, really. It's basically the whole capitalist system here is being shown for what it is. We talk quite a lot on this show about housing being a human right, and it should be. It should be a human right to have decent quality housing. But we've seen in the past, legislation being turned down for landlords to have a responsibility to make their homes fit for human habitation. Remember that a few years back, and they didn't have to do that. Now, the problem is here we've got, if you've got proper social housing, the state becomes the landlord. And if you start to do that in a real way, in a real meaningful way, like they do in other countries, like France, it's quite unusual to own your own house. The state does own a lot of those things, and they have a responsibility and say, okay, right, we want this to be decent, we want it to be fine, we want it to pay for itself, maybe, so people will pay something for it, but it's not for profit. Housing is not for profit. Making sure that people have habitable homes is a point of pride for our nation. And if we kind of move towards that, maybe we'd see better homes, maybe we'd see cheaper rents, all these things that are very important. But instead, what we've had is we've had this push to shift away from public debt. Public debt is private sector wealth. If a government decides to create debt, what they're doing is creating money, and that money will go into the economy. They could choose to do that and say, right, okay, we'll run this sector and we'll get some money back and all sorts of things. They could do different things with that. But what they try to do is instead shift it to private debt and allow banks to create money, and that has been a big shift. And so many people are in so much debt, and that's how house prices started going up. Well, we'll give you more and more debt. We'll give you more and more debt because that's our private sector wealth. That's our bank's wealth. So that's like the richest people making money. And that's the system we've created. And now we've got houses that are unaffordable. If you look at, I guess when you first bought your home, John, I guess it was maybe 3 times your yearly salary or something like that. Now it's more 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times an average salary. I'm probably, when I started with 5, that people would probably kill for having 5 times the salary as the mortgage. So what's happened over time is mortgages have gone up, debt's gone up, and this is the situation we're left with. And even social housing, that's for profit as well. There are social housing groups at the end, and they still reporting profits at the end of everything they do, and that's what the bottom line is. They're not there to create national pride in what lovely housing they have. They're there to make a profit for someone who probably has nothing to do with the area, doesn't care about the people who live there. We're completely detached from the society that we live in, and maybe if maybe someone who is a landlord who like says, oh, you know what, I've got this house, I can afford to buy another one, and I'll know the people that, you know, if they've got one house, then maybe they'll do a decent job every now and then. But when it gets like bigger and bigger and bigger and just becomes for profit, it becomes completely unsustainable. So a massive systemic change is what we need.
I mean, I've said this before. One of the problems with social landlords, when they created these social landlords, they took over vast amounts of council housing stock. That council housing stock was beset with problem tenants. And of course, the social landlords solved that by chucking them all out. Those poor people who already came from very troubled situations just descended upon what Kerry was talking about, the sump rental market, where they live in conditions of terror because the landlords there don't put up with any crap. And and in the meantime, all the social housing. You're absolutely right. It's about just running the thing at a profit, and
they also like these renters do. Sorry, these landlords do rely on the public sector as well. So it's like so they'll get some money, and you know, if people can't afford to have a home, then the public sector will pay for the people to live in those houses, and they'll take money off the top. They'll make a profit off that, and it's just a nonsense situation. We see it all over. It's like the privatization of social housing, the privatization of the NHS, the privatization like PFI and things like that New Labour did. These are all things that have been a transfer of wealth from the poorest to the richest, direct, like, so using the poorest people as a middle person between the state and the rich. It's like a state giveaway to the richest. And people need to get their heads around the fact that most of the wealth that people are getting at the moment is state driven. The state's still in debt. The state's like still got like public money, like creating public money. The problem is where it's ending up. They're not bothered about like creating loads and loads of wealth for the richest.
And some fabulous comments. Mark Lumley, have we heard about landlords in London charging 3 and 4 figure sums for viewings? Lots of people sharing their things about mould and what they were told, and how stupid that system is. Jacqueline Hemmings, when are they going to get around to banning Section 21 no-fault evictions? Well, that's in the government's current legislation, proposed legislation. But as Jane pointed out, it's accompanied by the fact that you can chuck somebody out in a fortnight. And it's not just if they're doing antisocial behaviour, it's if their behaviour is likely to upset neighbours. So that's a movable feast, isn't it? And
in social housing, John, that doesn't apply though, because it takes months to get an antisocial family out of a social house, and they've got to have so much evidence to evict them and everything like that. It could take 6 months to evict someone from a social housing house.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad. It's a bad thing if they are bad though, but it's like a good thing if they're not bad, but they're portrayed to be bad.
One last thing. Thank you, Nye Davies. As usual, always the cheerful, chatty preamble, which is warming and welcoming, with none of the hostile environment that oozes out from neoconservative and right-wing neolibertarian forums and the elitist establishment class. Nye, I love you forever. Let's move on. If you thought that the topic on the private rental sector was depressing, just wait till you hear the next one. Jane, what's going on in Israel and Palestine? What's this with this Netanyahu government? What are they up to?
So Netanyahu formed a new government back in December, and since then, human rights charities have raised concerns that there has been a sharp, I think Amnesty International called it a sharp reduction in what was already very poor human rights conditions for Palestinians. More recently, there was an open letter from 60 human rights and civil rights organisations, including Israeli human rights organisations, saying that the UN leadership need to ensure that its efforts to combat anti-Semitism do not inadvertently embolden or endorse policies and laws that undermine fundamental human rights, including the right to speak and organise in support of Palestinian rights, and to criticise the Israeli government policies. And a group of Israeli law professors have recently, I think it's the Israeli Law Professors Forum for Democracy, 120 prominent law professors in Israel have made a statement recently urging for caution around the fact that what Netanyahu's new government is doing is validating, or some of the measures they've taken is validating the claim that Israel practices apartheid. So things have been looking very dark for Palestinian people since this new government came in. Things obviously weren't good before that, but things are getting very bad very quickly. I think
there's more going on. I mean, what's all this about Greater Israel and this chappie in Paris and sort of and tearing at Netanyahu's torn up on, or at least published a tweet taking himself out of the two-state solution, hasn't he? I mean, what's going on with sort of Israel's ambitions in the Middle East region?
Well, last year, even before this new government was formed, Amnesty International had released a report around the punitive system of oppression by the Israeli authorities against Palestinian people, which they said then already amounted to apartheid. They reported on the seizure of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings of Palestinians, forcible transfer of Palestinian people from their land, which I believe is what the International Criminal Court has just issued a warrant for Putin for, movement restrictions on Palestinian people, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians in Israel. And this was before the crackdown that's taken place under this new government. So this is terrible. There were regularly reports in the media, perhaps not in the mainstream media, but around atrocities committed against Palestinian people, children, journalists. We've all heard the stories about the indiscriminate killings, I'd say. Shireen Abu Akleh was murdered, was it last year or the year before? She was wearing a prominent press jacket. She wasn't, it was an absolute atrocity. And it's just one of many, many instances. It's a really terrible situation for the Palestinian people.
I mean, I've just looked it up now. Smotrich, who's the finance minister, he went to Paris and he was sort of speaking in front of a map of Greater Israel, which showed an Israel which included all of Jordan, parts of Saudi Arabia. So there's an expansionism there, and the colonization of the West Bank is just part of it. And finally, before we move on, what's going on with the judiciary here? Because there's been massive protests about what they've been proposing for the judiciary, Netanyahu and his government.
So I know that Netanyahu's made some proposals for changes to the judiciary, which would allow him to have more control, I believe. Is that right, John?
Yeah.
But I know there's been massive protests from Israeli people, and even after he announced that he was going to water down the measures or hold back on them, there have continued to be protests in Israel. So this is causing an awful lot of upset there.
I mean, it's like Britain, really. Sort of the surprise people when you elect an extreme right-wing government. And then they suddenly start doing extreme right-wing things. Oh my golly, I sort of have very little sympathy. Paul, Sunak recently welcomed Netanyahu to Britain. Labour has said that it's going to drop through the Jewish news. It's been announced in the Jewish news that Labour is going to drop a two-state solution. Drop the recognition of the state of Palestine from its manifesto commitment. What do you reckon to Britain's response to what's going on in Israel at the moment? Should we be doing things differently? Are you happy with what's going on?
It's really interesting when you see like Amnesty International declares that Israel is an apartheid state. They are practicing what they consider to be apartheid. Ireland says the same thing. The UN says the same thing. And it seems to be a small group of Western nations who sell a lot of weapons to Israel and who seem to think of Israel as being very strategically important in a military sense, don't want to consider it to be apartheid. It is an apartheid state. The treatment of the Palestinians is utterly, utterly disgusting. And people try to hide behind accusations of anti-Semitism all the time based on this, which I also find anti-Semitic in itself. We've had Jewish scholars recently saying that, not Jewish scholars, Israeli scholars, and it's really important to make that distinction. So Israeli scholars living in Israel have declared that their policies are apartheid policies. We've got people who are refusing to be drafted. So you've got young people in Israel who are refusing to be drafted into the army over there because of the apartheid that they see in their own country. Now, these people are brave. These people are wonderful. And it's nothing to do with the fact that Israel is a Jewish state, that they are practicing apartheid. Because all those people, all those Jewish people around the world who support Palestine, who are the biggest advocates for Palestine, who are horrified at Israel trying to hide behind saying, oh no, it's because we're a Jewish state. It's not because, nothing to do with them being a Jewish state. Jewish people are as diverse as any other group of people in the entire, any other group of people you can think of. And there will be lovely, kind people, and there will be wonderful people, and those who practice their religion will be lovely, kind people. But there are also a bunch of bastards who will happen to be Jewish, and they happen to be in charge of Israel's government at the moment. And it's nothing to do with their Jewishness that they're doing this, but it is absolutely disgusting. It is an apartheid state. If you look at the people who they declared anti-Semites, they say, oh, Jeremy Corbyn's an anti-Semite, but it's not just Jeremy Corbyn, it's Ken Loach. Oh, it's Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu apparently is an anti-Semite because he said Israel's an apartheid state. I'm sorry, but you can't just go around flinging that accusation around. It means something, and every time they do that, it utterly belittles the idea that anti-Semitism is one of the most gross, disgusting things that anyone can do. If you look at the Holocaust, if you look at what happened there, and that, those deep-seated hatreds that people have carried against Jewish people for years and years and years, and then you go and say Jeremy Corbyn's an anti-Semite because you think he might actually be anti-Semitic because he's complaining because Israel are treating people badly, because you have to I'll do a bit of thought police on you. I think he's thinking that. He doesn't think that at all. It's disgraceful. Sorry, I'm going on a rant, but I'm furious about this.
It's interesting what you're saying there. The Church of England recently brought a case against one of their vicars, a former vicar, for being anti-Semitic, and the prosecution at that case, which was held before the Church of England, was that there is a new anti-Semitism, and that it is anti-Semitic criticised. That new anti-Semitism, that it's anti-Semitic to criticise the state of Israel. That was argued at. And the Church of England chucked it out. They wouldn't accept that. And it is not anti-Semitic, even in the Church of England, to criticise the state of Israel.
It isn't because Jewish people don't even have the same opinions. There are some people who are anti-Zionist who are Jewish. This is to say it's anti-Semitic to criticise the state of Israel is to suggest that Jewish people all think alike and they aren't as diverse of thought of as any other people, and there's something uniquely homogenous about Jewish people. No, that is anti-Semitic in itself. Jewish people are as diverse as any other group.
And there's government. Is there a difference between the state of Israel and the government of Israel?
I think people can make different arguments around that. There is no excuse for the behaviour of the people who are in charge of the state of Israel. Yeah. I don't care what things are called, to be honest. I don't really believe in lines drawn on maps. I think it's a bit weird. I would love there to be an area of the world where Jewish people, Christian people who live in that area, and Muslim people all live in a lovely land, like I'm told. Like, I'm not 100% sure on the history of it, but Palestine was supposedly a more secular place where all religions were welcomed, rather than what we have now, where you have a hierarchy of religion. That's what I would like to see, but I just like to see that anyway. I don't really care what people think. If someone came along and called Great Britain a different thing, I don't think I would feel particularly different about the place. You know what I mean? Like, names maybe matter to some people more than me, so I'm not the right person to talk to about that, about whether Israel needs to exist or not, but I don't think there should be a hierarchy.
It shouldn't be certainly a place of torture. Kerry, how worried do we need to be worried about what's going on in Netanyahu's Israel? I mean, are we talking war in the Middle East? Are we talking about a world war? Are we talking about the elimination of Palestine as an entity? Or is this going to blow over and things get back? How dangerous is what's going on?
I just think that they're using religion as a weapon. Like, I've been accused of being an anti-Semite, which I'm far from. And I just think that, like, there's an extreme version of being an anti-Semite now. I just think that they're making it out to be a racist ideology to get their own way. If that makes it makes sense in my head. It might not make a lot of sense to you.
No, I sort of. I mean, it's a way to get support, isn't it? You bang the nationalistic drum.
Yeah, and that's just the way I feel at the moment. I mean, you look at things that are going on in Palestine, but yet we, as a nation, scream about Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the same kind of things are going on in Palestine. What is double standard? That is so double standardish. And I hate that. I genuinely hate that. And I think that people who, I won't mention that. Well, I will mention the Labour Party because they accuse me of being an anti-Semite and I'm not. The Labour Party, you're using that as a weapon to expel members because they're getting paid off Israel and stuff like that. We've all seen the evidence of that. And I think that it's disgraceful that the Jewish community are being used a lot of the time as scapegoats to suit people's agendas. And that makes me bad. That really makes me ill. And I don't think that we would do that in any other religious community. And I think that a lot of people in society, because it's not going for their agenda. I'm trying to be careful with my words here, that's why I'm kind of stuttering. It's not going for their agenda. Just say, oh, well, you're an anti-Semite, because it's not going in their favour. And I think it's disgusting that the Jewish religion is being used as a weapon in global society, shall I just say.
Thank you very much indeed. Some comments here. Neil Terry has made some smashing comments. If you just look at the comments, I think particularly pointing out that the government has got legislation which will stop people boycotting goods from Israel, which as we were talking earlier, Paul was talking about how inadequate the British reaction is to what's going on. Maria Nelson as well, thank you for your comments. You like Kerry, drew the discrepancy between our attitudes to the Ukraine and our attitudes towards Palestine. Thank you very much indeed. Last question. Teachers, yay! So the teachers rule, okay. What's happening with teachers at the moment? They're all on holiday! Lazy. What's happening with teachers at the moment?
Shocking.
This one for me, John.
Yes, you.
Okay, so teaching unions who have all balloted their members to see whether they want to go on strike. The NEU met the threshold. All teaching unions, I believe, did vote to go on strike, but they didn't meet the threshold, which is 50% of all the members need to reply by post, which can be quite problematic given that a lot of addresses aren't updated and things like that, and what have you, and things get lost in the post, and there are issues around that. But anyway, the NEU have been taking strike action. I've been taking strike action along with them. I'm a member of 2 unions now because they're going on strike. I joined the NEU to join in that strike action, as well as NASUWT. The government have come back to all the unions and said, oh, well, we're going to slightly improve the offer. They haven't said they weren't going to improve the offer. And they offered 4.3% next year, which so basically, if you look into the past, since the world financial crisis, or at least since 2010, teachers' wages have been frozen, or there've been small below inflation pay rises. Now this has happened year upon year upon year, and now the teachers have missed out. If you add up all the differences, so per year, I think the teachers are about £10,000 on average less than they would have been getting if it had gone up with inflation. But if you think about all the lost earnings, it's a lot more than that, because every year they've lost a little bit more, and they've lost a little bit more, and if you add all those up, you're like £20,000-30,000 down on where you should be, and everyone's had enough. And it's not just that; it's like paying conditions as well. As well as pay, it's conditions of service. People are working harder, class sizes are going up, and one of the things that is very, very important to note is the unions are all asking for a funded pay rise. Now the government is saying, well, we'll give you a small pay rise, which is under inflation, but you're going to have to find that from existing budgets. So, that budget that, maybe you can cut down on the amount of exercise books that you have, or that massive heating bill that you got last year that you have to pay for. Yeah, well, sorry, because you're going to have to find not only that, but you're also going to have to find extra wages, and that's going to lead to redundancies. So the government aren't even going to fund the pay rises, the measly pay rises they've been offered. Now, bearing in mind MPs year on year, they actually haven't missed out at all since the world financial crisis. They are exactly where they should be, because in 2015, when David Cameron's government got in and the Tories got control, they decided to give them a massive pay rise to catch them up to where they were. So MPs are absolutely fine. They're doing fine. But teachers, people who go into work every day to try and look after the next generation, are in financial difficulties. And people have just had enough. So the NEU have announced 2 more strike days, and will not accept that. All the unions, I believe, all the unions have balloted members to see whether they accept this new terrible deal. I believe it was 98% of NEU members on a 60% turnout in 6 days said no. So yeah, there's going to be more strike action. They've also mitigated that a little bit by saying that they will make arrangements for year 11 and year 13 because they have exams coming up. Now, how reasonable is that? Can you ask for a more reasonable group of people who are going to actually, you know what, if you're worried about your exams, we'll help you. A couple of years ago, think about how the government treated the people during the pandemic and how little they valued education. They were going to just do it on an algorithm. They didn't care at all. But teachers do care. And I think they're demonstrating that at the moment very clearly.
Thank you. Kerry, I mean, are you with the teachers on this? Do you think they ought to reject the government's offer and go on?
Oh, they should tell them where to shove it where the sun don't shine. For me, I think that in our little school and our secondary school during the pandemic and everything like that, and over the last few years, teachers have become social workers, support workers, they feed kids, they clothe kids. They've become much more than teachers. And they do that, like, especially and I know other schools, not just our little school, in our big school, they do so much for our kids. They bend over backwards for them. They like do everything for them. And it's quite tragic that our teachers aren't seen the same. I mean, I remember our school went during COVID and they were offering like packed lunches in the first lockdown. And I used to go and get them, just to get out of the house for a bit away from the kids. And I used to go down and get them and they were so supportive. Have you got everything? I'm absolutely flabbergasted that the disgusted the way this government's treating the people who were like teaching our future generations. It absolutely infuriates me. It makes me bad. It really, really makes me bad.
Kerry,
And I think that
do you think, Kerry, that the reason the government is behaving in the way we do is precisely because they know that the teachers actually care so much about the children? I mean, do you think the teachers have brought this on themselves by actually giving a damn about the children and not wanting to harm them?
well, if you go into a teaching profession, you obviously care about children, regardless if it's primary or secondary school. You obviously want to make a difference in a child's life. And our school, I can't, honestly, as a parent, I cannot, and with a SEND child as well, I cannot fault our teachers. To me, the sun shines out their asses. And sorry, John, for swearing.
So I've heard Paul described in various ways, but
that's why I swore, because I know Paul daily swore earlier, so I know I can get away with it. But yeah, I think that our teachers deserve far much more credit than what they're actually receiving. And I mean, I'm not being funny. Does Rishi Sunak give a hoot about a primary school teacher in a state school or a secondary school teacher in a state school? Or is he more bothered about his privately educated children and what's happening in their lives? They could not give a hoot, and they cannot give a hoot. And I'm saying hoot instead of swearing here, John. And I think it's really infuriating. To me, it's literally like the amazing teachers during lockdown, COVID, and everything like that have been smacked in the belly with a sledgehammer. And I think that this government should be ashamed at the way they're treating our teaching staff. It really bothers me. It really does. It makes me bad.
God bless you. Jane, last question on this to you. I mean, it's true, teachers have been notoriously flaky about going on strike in the past. Many of them have gone in because they had to give their children breakfast, which they were already paying for out of their own pockets. And they've not gone on strike. This time is different, isn't it? What do you think has steeled the teachers' resolve this time in a way that in the past hasn't quite been evident?
I mean, I'm sure Paul would have a lot more knowledge on this than me, but it seems to me that we've reached a breaking point at this stage where the education system has been so broken over the years in terms of the quality of what the teachers are able to give to the children because of the restrictions on the syllabus and what they're allowed to teach and how they're allowed to teach it, with new rules coming in. You're not allowed now to teach anything that goes against capitalism. Ridiculous, inappropriate rules coming into play in a system that's already underfunded and on its knees. We've heard about school playing fields being sold off, schools being privatised and turned into academies. One of our local ones, I think £2 million mysteriously went missing. No one knows where that went. I've heard so many terrible stories about academies, and I know from speaking to friends who are teachers, they work really hard. They put so much in, and it's become increasingly hard for them and difficult for them to deal with what they're seeing day to day. Like you say, it's not just what's happened to education and the syllabus. It's them seeing children who aren't eating, children taking food from bins. I read a story about an article about a teacher who set up a charity to deliver mattresses to children where she lives, because she found that so many children where she lived didn't even have a mattress to sleep on, let alone food to eat. And the salaries having declined the way they have for teachers, that now I suspect a lot of teachers are just struggling to make ends meet, just like everyone else. The education spend has gone down from 5.6% of GDP in 2010 to 4.2% of GDP now. Where's the money going to? What are they spending it on? Because they're cutting funding on their NHS, they're cutting everything. I've just read a story about £206 million in dividends over the last 2 years going to the company that leases equipment to train companies. So that's where our money is going. They're squeezing education and other important services, taking money out into private hands whilst
Can I just
everyone
come back in a
suffers.
minute? Sorry, Jane.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can I just come back in it from a personal perspective? My name's Mr. McIntyre, right? He was an NQT in year 4, and he done his NQT, and then he's now a fully qualified teacher in year 5. This young lad, right, he's 24. He's brilliant with our kids. He's got 3 children in one class who's lost a parent. So that's like, they're becoming even grievance counsellors for kids now. So like in our class, they don't do Father's Day cards or Mother's Day cards because there's 3 children in the class, including my Eve, who've lost a parent. So they're having to also deal with that. And it's just wrong, isn't it? And it really infuriates me that they're just seen as our teachers, they've got it good. But they're everything now, social workers, grievance counsellors, everything. They're everything. My Eve absolutely idolises Mr. McIntyre. And he, you know, like Ben Mitchell off EastEnders years ago with the little glasses on and that. Can anyone remember little Ben Mitchell? Well, Mr. McIntyre is just a bit of a taller version. He's only 24. I'm old enough to be his man, which is grim. But he's amazing. And he's now like a grievance counsellor and everything for 3 kids in like a 26-kid class. And I think that teachers are absolutely just shot under the bus and discredited at any given opportunity. GCSEs go wrong, it's the teacher's fault. Everything goes wrong, it's the teacher's fault. It's wrong.
Thank you. And with that eulogy for Mr. McIntyre, we'll bring the show to a close. Thank you. Sort of everybody's loving you, trying not to swear as well. What it remains, first of all, Justicios, thank you for your fabulous comments. Thank you. You're just really good this week. Thank God bless. Well done. The 5th member of the panel, spot on. To my guests, Paul, Jane, and Kerry, as always, you've just been fantastic, and thank you for those really amazing and insightful comments. From me, it's goodbye. I'm going to hand over to Paul to close the show as he always does. And but don't forget, Justicios, we need you next week as well. See you then.
I'm not coming next week, sorry.
Well, the show will be the poorer for it, Kerry.
Oh, thanks, John.
Paul, what have you got to tell us?
Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been a really good show, I think. Thank you so much to John for doing all the things. He prepares us, you know, he prepares us and gives us articles and things like that so that we don't look really, really stupid. So thanks for all the work that John does. He's an absolute superstar. Thanks to Jane and Curry. It was really brilliant as well to hear from Curry tonight from a renter's perspective as well. And that's one of the
Kerry
beauties.
Or Curry, Paul?
What?
Curry or Kerry?
I said Curry.
You sound like you're saying curry.
Do I? That's just my accent.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
a Durham accent, isn't it? It's the Durham thing.
Yeah. So I've lost my train of thought a little bit.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. And that's one of the beauties of Socialist Think Tank. We do try to give people who actually have some experience of what we're talking about in there, and it matters to them. So like tonight we've had a renter and a teacher, and and I suppose it was a bit difficult for Jane leading on Israel Palestine, as she's not Israeli or Palestinian. However, she did a wonderful job, and I really, really appreciate everything you've done. Make sure you subscribe to us on all things, whether that's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all TikTok. I think we've got a TikTok Laura's ticking over on, so that's really good. So do all those things, and then hopefully we will see you all next week. Last thing is congratulations to Daniel Kebedy, friend of the show, who's been elected General Secretary of the NEU. So that's worth saying, and that was going on in the chat as well. Thank you so much to the people who are in the chat. We will see you all soon, and you can go to socialisthinktank.com and become a member if you would like. We will see you all next week, I hope. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.